India is faced with the threat of two nuclear armed neighbors with whom we have gone to war. Especially in China's case, absence of war does not mean peace. Our next speaker represents India's cutting edge in defense research and development. I now invite on stage Dr. Chandrika Kaushik, Director General, Production Coordination and Services Interaction from DRDO. Dr. Chandrika Kaushik, scientist, an outstanding scientist, took over as DG PCI with effect from June 1st, 2022. She is a graduate in computer science from Delhi University and obtained her master's in computer science from DAVV, Indore, and MBA from FMS Delhi University. She has also obtained a doctorate in public-private partnership in 2018. Today, she will talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, R&D, the cutting edge. Ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Respected veterans, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. I am happy to be present here with you today and share my views. The topic given to me is Atmanirbhar Bharat, R&D, the cutting edge. So it is the research and development that is happening in the country which gives cutting edge to the armed forces, right? Next slide, please. India stands at the top of the table in the trend indicator values at $4,000 million. That is the value of imports in 2021, followed by countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Australia, China. All efforts need to be put to make Indian armed forces Atmanirbhar, and this has been brought home by the last couple of years, our experiences during COVID, where for very, very simple things like mask, PPE, we were forced to look at imports from neighboring countries, nothing very high tech amongst them. But that was the status. And the beauty was that within no time, the country could ramp up and do whatever was required in the country. So all the ingredients are there. We just need to make it happen. Nothing that is missing. The same is applicable in the area of defense today. So while we are at the top of the import pyramid, there is the time has come for the tide to be turning. We are moving. The necessity for becoming self-reliant cannot be overemphasized, and the government is taking all steps to make this happen. The clear direction on development of indigenous capability through various initiatives of the government policy directions are there to be seen. Now, what is it that gives us indigenous capability? You need to have your indigenous technologies. You cannot become self-reliant on imported technologies. Clear definitions on the systems, the capabilities required by armed forces. You need to invest in science and technology in the academic institutions. Unless until we seed the technologies that are required for tomorrow, this perennial dependence can continue. And last, but most important, all constituents contributing towards the goal of Atmanirbharta, working together in a very, very synergistic approach. We need to have cohesion amongst all stakeholders. Next slide, please. On the screen, you see the various stakeholders contributing towards self-reliance. And DRDO, along with all the stakeholders, is constantly working towards development of advanced defense systems through working in the research and development that is required for development of these systems, and thereby providing the cutting edge to the armed forces. Next slide. The government's push to self reliance in defense is evident from the numerous policy measures that have been adopted. Clear directives on the use of indigenous systems. First preference to induction of systems that have been designed, developed, and manufactured in the country, bringing in a clear shift from not only what was manufactured in the country earlier to what is developed in the country based on homegrown technologies. The government's policy directive towards these is very unequivocal, and clear directives have been issued. Wherever possible, no imports policy. If possible, make everything in the country. 25% for R&D to the industry out of the budget. So a number of measures over period have been put in place, and this is what is revitalizing the defense research and development industrial ecosystem. May I have the next slide, please? The impact of all these initiatives is what contributes to our national security, providing our armed forces the latest technologies, manufacturing capability in the Indian industry, ensuring that there is no dependency on imports, the robust supply chains, which become very, very important in times of conflict, the maintenance support that is required for the complete life cycle and upgrades, all this will be made available indigenously once indigenous systems are being used by the armed forces. And the side effects are the impact on the national economy. While we no doubtly save foreign exchange, at the same time, multiple jobs in the defense industry, spin offs of technologies in the civilian sector, exports. The way to go is towards establishing our military industrial complexes, wherein personnel from the armed forces are not only participating in the design and development, I also see them participating in the industries, right from hand holding the entire process from conceptualizing of the systems towards their development, production, maintenance, quality assurance. Armed forces will need to hold the hands during the entire chain. That is how I see the future. Next, please. Where are we today? Go ahead. Today, the bright side, while I started with a negative note talking about the imports part, today we are a country where we are exporting major systems, right? Next slide, please. While we started, I'm talking about DRDO here, while we started with about 10 labs way back in 1958, today we have reached the stage where we have our own indigenous aircrafts, we have our own maiden battle tanks, we have our own submarines, we have our own electronic warfare systems, we can develop and produce our own radars, communication systems, torpedoes, sonars, and missile systems. So the capability for development of these systems exists in the country. Next slide, please. We have our own artillery gun, and the unique capability, it can reach it about 48 kilometers. We have the capability to engage. Anti-satellite capability is there in the country, and that is no mean feat. So the airborne warning and control systems, the strategic triad capability, all this is existing in the country. So technology is not a constraint towards becoming Atmanirbhar. All the constituents that are required are there in place. We just need to hash them together to quickly become from a net importer to a net exporter. Now, what is it that needs? The government is working in a very, very focused manner towards making that change and making it happen. Next slide. So, not only uh, systems, the newer technologies, hypersonics, which is the latest in the area of missiles technologies, the air independent propulsion systems, the technologies required to land your own fighter aircrafts onto a deck and take off from it. All this is existing in the country. We have come a long way. Next slide, please. Today, we have capabilities and we are self reliant in terms of technologies in the area of missiles, fighter aircrafts, airborne warning, early warning systems, radars, electronic warfare in all the three domains: ground, ship, airborne, software defined radios, torpedoes, various kinds of bombs, warheads, munitions, rockets, artillery guns, armored fighting vehicles, combat engineering equipment, NBC systems. And I'm not talking about the systems which are being produced in the country based on technology, manufacturing technology obtained from either the East or the West, but I'm talking about indigenous, homegrown technology that is done within the academic institutions, the DRDO labs, and produced in the industry. Next slide, please. In addition to the systems, a lot of work is happening towards building the basic building blocks, the encompassing technologies in the area of navigation sensors, accelerometers, the gallium nitride devices. So, the material required for that, fabricating the devices, and converting them into the modules that form the components that go towards production in the various radars, EW systems. All that is happening in the country. And some of our industries are also exporting these to the countries outside. High end optics, both in the private sector, public sector, critical testing facilities, carbon carbon technologies, radomes, which play a very important part, RF transparent radomes. A lot of work is happening in different domains. Next slide, please. We are also working in other areas of non kinetic warfare capabilities, cyber technologies, quantum, artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is something that goes across all systems. The self learning algorithms based on the data that you capture during an execution phase is a part of any system that is today developed across any DRDO lab. Robotics, next generation propulsion technologies, Space based capabilities, a lot of work is happening in this area. Miniaturized power sources, materials, may I have the next slide, please. Various kind of surveillance systems, autonomous vessels, both on the ground and underwater, remotely operated systems, stealth technologies, morphing. A lot of work is happening across various labs in these areas. Next slide, please. The next generation platforms that DRDO is working in: advanced medium combat aircraft, the twin engine dex based platform for the Navy, unmanned combat vessels, next generation main battle tank, FICVs, multi mission maritime aircraft, which give unique capabilities to Coast Guard as well as to Indian Navy on lines similar to the AWNC for Air Force. In terms of futuristic weapons and sensors, long range hypersonic cruise missiles, which go below the enemy radar and are not detectable, very long range air to air missiles, very long range radars, long range systems for airborne early warning and control. Next slide, please. Now, how do we do it? What happens in DRDO labs? Along with the DRDO labs, industry and academia are playing a very, very significant role. They are our partners in the complete design and development phases. So, coming first to the industry, more than 1,500 technology transfers have been provided to Indian industry. About 90 industries have been identified where they participate right from the beginning of the development process. It is not that the system has been developed and then the TOT is transferred to the industry for production, but right from the beginning itself, the technology, their work with the R&D labs together, and that is how we condense the timelines towards production and concurrent engineering happens. The Technology Development Fund for seeding technology independently in the private sector, and along with providing financial assistance, handholding these startups and MSMEs towards development of technology. More than 1,700 IPRs are made available to Indian industry, which they can make use of, supporting them in utilizing the test facilities across DRDO labs, also providing them evaluation and certification support. So industry is partnering with the DRDO in a big way towards developing capabilities. Next slide, please. And academia works with us very, very integrated manner in the TRL 1 to 3 levels. The technologies that are developed in the DRDO labs, the science part of it is seeded in the academic institutions. There are about 15 centers of excellence established by DRDO in various academic institutions, the IITs, ISC, and these are specialized verticals identified to work in specific core areas. Along with that, we work with a number of academic institutions where they take on projects in identified areas, which then contribute towards the ongoing and future projects being taken up by DRDO. There are 4 research and development boards which give which are working specifically in the our research required in the area of aeronautics, armaments, life sciences, and naval research. In addition to that, the labs at their own level can play specific contracts onto academic institutions for certain specific deliverables. Next slide, please. So, a brief snapshot of some of the deliverables that have come from the DRDO stable and are being produced by the Indian industry for the three verticals of the Indian Armed Forces. Next slide, please. I would like to summarize that whatever it needs to make the country self reliant is existing in the country. India is the power which fuels a lot of technology which goes abroad. Nothing is missing. We just need to tinker a little bit the ecosystem and get it going in the country. And I can see that happening in the next 5 years or so. The vision will be entirely different. We will be self reliant, and that is the way. And DRDO will do its best towards helping realize this goal of Atmanirbhar defense. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Would you like to ask some questions? Yes, sir.
It's okay. Thank you, ma'am. I'm the Commander Bakshi. Excellent and eye-opening presentation, ma'am. Thank you very much. But I have one question to ask. We have advanced in every field as you have shown us. But I have one very basic question which is being troubling me for a long time. The propulsion systems, whether it is aircraft, whether it is tank, whether it is a ship, why are we behind in making our own engine? You can make an aircraft, airframe, everything, but if you don't have an engine, we'll be put to, test every time, whether it is anything. And the grade metal, engine grade metal, tank grade metal, and artillery guns grade metal. Are we making it? This is a very question in my mind. Kindly give me the answer for that. Thank you, ma'am.
I think the metal issue is taken care of in all the domains. But yes, propulsion is one area where we will need to focus, and government is looking very seriously at it. It needs considerable amount of investment to the tune of thousands of crores, and but the government is looking at it very, very seriously, and I'm hopeful that we should be able to overcome this dependency also very soon.
Yeah, hi, ma'am. My name is Ashwani Bhatt. It's so heartwarming to see the amount of development and indigenous products being developed out of DRDO. While you mentioned about the tie-up with 15 IITs and IISCs in terms of the academia program, but I believe, and maybe get your thoughts on that as well, there is still a lot to be done in terms of tapping on the brain drain. How do we sort of tap into the brain drain that we have and kind of encourage the talent, and there is quite a talent available, so that we encourage them to take part into the DRDO programs and nation building. A common student these days studying technology, the vision is private organizations or abroad. Thank you.
I don't think brain drain is such a serious issue as of now. There is both ways this migration is happening from here to outside, and reverse migration is also happening. But yes, we can always improvise on the ecosystem, make it more lucrative. Entrepreneurs have to set in their own initiatives in the country, and towards that end government is providing a lot of incentives for MSMEs, startups, the kind of incubation centers that are coming across all in the academic institutions. So that is the way forward. And even in our centers of excellence, industry is kind of becoming a partner, so that what is happening in the academic institutions is getting seamlessly translated towards industry. And that is the way I think which will take our industries forward. I think Mr. Bharat has been raising his hand for quite some time.
The slide you showed of the 30 countries that you're collaboration with. Most of these projects, the Indian contribution ends up being the low value end. I don't want to mention all the projects, but I know, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So what we end up doing is the low value work, and what the countries we are collaborating with, they keep the high end, high value work. How much do we benefit from these kinds of collaborations? Now, it may be that some of these countries are politically necessary to be cultivated, etc. So, but keeping that factor aside, the problem really is that we end up doing very little original work, and we end up still being dependent on outside sources for there's no value addition, let's put it that way, from our end, of the type we need. And most of the major platforms you're talking about, and it was just mentioned by Wing Commander Bakshi, the engines and propulsion systems, the avionics, the fire control systems, and so on. This is what we face, that our indigenous projects are more by weight than value. Whether it's ships, we say we have made a ship. Yes, you have. 80% by weight, but the 20% is where most of the value resides. And there we still are dependent. So I think there should be some honesty in talking about what the times tables are. And we actually achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is very necessary, but we have carried on 70 years in this fashion. I mean, just to have a time perspective here, the first indigenous aircraft, and it was indigenous, the Marut, flew in 1961. So we keep repeating the same cycles and falling into the same things. And I'm sure the services are to blame because they're caught into the dependency matrix, they like imported stuff and so on. But we started very early on it, and we haven't progressed.
So I assume that's a comment and you're not asking any question. Is that right? So you talked about collaboration, and I'll restrict myself to that without commenting on anything else. So the collaborations that DRDO gets into, we are mostly into G2G collaborations, and there it is on an equal basis. We work on joint projects where we work together, and actually it's not really 30. These are mostly the G2G engagements that are happening at the government level. And if a subject comes up where both the countries are interested in working on a specific technology domain, then that is what we progress under these G2G arrangements. I hope that answers it.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
My name is Gaurav Arya. I'm taking time to take you back to basics. Very impactful presentation. Compliments on what has been achieved. But I think the Ukraine war has taught us one thing. It's not just offensive operations. There's a lot to do with defensive, a lot to do with survivability. And in your presentation, I have not seen a word of survivability. In the issues is when a lot of TNT is going to land on your head at the Ladakh ranges, the survivability of your infantry and your armor will ultimately tell what is the result of the battle. What are we doing in terms of materials? We heard about materials and material research and development. What are we doing in terms of materials, in terms of survivability? Because you've seen what's happened to the infantry and the armor in the Ukraine war. Their survival has been at stake.
A lot of work is happening in the area of survivability and defensive, but I don't think this is the forum to answer that question. If you would like to have a one-to-one dialogue, we can take that separately.
I'm good to hear you. I've been interacting with you as DG Infantry 3-4 years back. I think time is running out for you. We are impatient. If you don't give the armed forces the
niche equipment, the right equipment to fight our next battle, we'll have to import. We have to look over our shoulders. I mean, countries like Turkey, Iran are producing UCAVs and they're being used in Ukraine war and so potent. Why isn't it we are able to produce? I mean, you have to do something really different than all this what we have seen. We have known all this. These slides are very familiar to us. But what is so different that you're doing? It's something like Elon Musk asking his employees, Twitter employees, to work 80 hours a week. Something different has to be done by DRDO, OFBs who have been restructured, and thank God you have started trusting the private industry now. It's too late and too little. I mean, I'm being very blunt, but we are facing it.
Okay. The answer to your question lies in your question itself, right? You use two terms, you and we. Who is you and who is we is something that you need to answer, right? If you want the systems that you need, firstly, that distinction between you and we should go, right? Armed forces cannot stand on a side and say that this is what I want without being a partner to what you want. If you are not ready to get into that mode, we will be where we are. And I alluded to that in one of my slides where I said that armed forces have to become a partner right from the conceptualization stage to the induction. That is one of the US models. And you can't say, I will give the QR and then I will sit and stand in evaluation. Sorry, I'm going back to my professional role, and this is not the forum to be into that mode, but somehow you triggered me for that. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
We are running short of time, so sorry for that. Thank you, ma'am, for the
Okay.
wonderful talk and taking up so many questions.